The day Andrew was officially welcomed into the family was a moment etched in my memory, a scene that mirrored my previous life's experience. This time, however, I arrived with 6 imposing bodyguards, a protective entourage that spoke volumes about my changed perspective. The Carter family greeted me with overwhelming warmth, their hands clasping mine as if I were their most treasured daughter. Mr. Carter, his face radiating pride, introduced me to everyone. "This is Emily Lynn," he announced, "the heiress of the Lynn Corporation." His wife quickly chimed in, her voice brimming with excitement. "And she's going to be the future daughter-in-law of our family." Even Joanna, Andrew's sister-in-law, welcomed me with a sugary, sweet smile that seemed to mask hidden intentions. In my previous life, this exact scene had played out with the same saccharine sweetness. The family had surrounded me with honeyed words and carefully laid traps, convincing me that Andrew's apparent indifference was merely a result of his introverted nature and sensitivity. I had been naive, believing his coldness stemmed from pride, and I was determined to win his heart at any cost. I had gone to extraordinary lengths to support Andrew, sacrificing my own family's concerns to help him succeed. I endured criticism from my elders, used every resource at my disposal, and never once did Andrew refuse my assistance. Yet, when my family faced its darkest moment, he not only abandoned us, but actively collaborated with our competitors to orchestrate our downfall. The memory of that devastating day still haunts me. My father, exhausted from finalizing the paperwork that would seal our company's fate, suffered a fatal heart attack in the elevator. As I cradled his lifeless body, the elevator doors opened to reveal Andrew, impeccably dressed and chillingly composed. His cold words cut through my grief like a knife. "Miss Emily, your support has fallen. Now, do you want to be my wife or a ruined woman?" That moment shattered my illusions completely. The vulnerable boy I once knew had transformed into a ruthless man capable of destroying everything I held dear. When I rejected his cruel proposition, he retaliated with calculated vengeance, using his influence to have my creditors harass me relentlessly, leaving me with no option but to beg for mercy. Our 8-year marriage was a cold, loveless arrangement. Andrew never showed me physical affection, and one room in our home remained a constant reminder of his past, a shrine dedicated to his first love, Sarah. Every morning at precisely 7 a.m., he would insist I light incense for her, then spend time alone in the room, mumbling heartbreaking words. "Sarah," he would say, "he deserves to grovel like a dog. If only you were still alive, we wouldn't have to torment each other like this." To this day, I remained uncertain of what crime I had committed to deserve such treatment. The Carter family had always been united in their assault against me, painting me as a villain responsible for Sarah's death. They branded me an unrepentant sinner, despite my complete innocence. The truth was far simpler and more tragic. On the day Sarah jumped into the sea, I was completely absorbed in preparing Andrew's birthday celebration. Sarah's message to me, her first and only direct communication, went unnoticed until after the party's conclusion. Those few words, "wishing you happiness," would later become a weapon used to condemn me, twisted into supposed evidence of my guilt. Years later, on our 8th wedding anniversary, Andrew manipulated me into driving him and Sarah's memorial tablet to a remote temple for a blessing, a journey that would nearly cost me my life. The mountain road proved treacherous. A violent car accident left me trapped in the driver's seat, immobilized and unable to call for help. Andrew, seated in the back, sustained minor injuries but made a horrifying choice. Instead of rushing to my aid, he deliberately watched as the vehicle caught fire. In those terrifying moments before the explosion, I screamed in desperation, demanding to know my connection to Sarah's death. His response was chillingly cold. "In your next life, be a better person. But there is no next life." Today marked my second day of rebirth. My eyes swept across the room, scanning the charming yet deceitful faces, finally settling on Andrew, hiding at the back, feigning aloofness. A surge of hatred consumed me, old pain resurfacing like a bitter memory. "Congratulations," I said, my smile razor-sharp. "You've officially been recognized. The Carter family has finally accepted their illegitimate son." The room's warmth evaporated instantly. Tension crackled through the air like electricity. Andrew's face transformed, turning a deep crimson of embarrassment. His typically elegant features contorted, revealing a vulnerability he usually kept hidden. His father's cunning was transparent. The only reason Andrew had been allowed to confront his wife and force a reconciliation was a carefully constructed narrative. They claimed we were college classmates, with me as the passionate pursuer, a fabrication designed to legitimize his position. Joanna, sensing the shift in atmosphere, approached me with a seemingly concerned whisper. "Emily, did you and my brother have a fight?" I pulled my hand away, memories flooding back. In my previous life, I had initially viewed Joanna as a kind, simple girl who welcomed her half-brother without hostility. How naive I had been. I later discovered she was a master manipulator, potentially even more skilled than her mother. Her public persona suggested she wanted Andrew and me to be happy. But behind closed doors, her true motivation was clear. She feared that with my family's support, Andrew would secure crucial inheritance rights to the company. Joanna had always been a master of manipulation. After my family's downfall, she was the first to strike, delivering merciless blows while I was at my weakest. Even after my marriage to Andrew, she frequently visited our home, constantly searching for ways to create discord between us. "Don't call me sister-in-law," I told her coldly. "You can't afford to tarnish my reputation." I strode past Joanna, making my way directly to Andrew. He towered over me, at least a head taller, his deep, unreadable eyes partially hidden by thick lashes that cast mysterious shadows across his face. He always maintained that brooding look, as if concealing secrets too heavy for anyone to comprehend. "They all say I'm your girlfriend," I said, tilting my head with a calculated precision. "I'm quite busy, so tell me, was I your girlfriend in my previous life?" Andrew had always kept our relationship frustratingly ambiguous. He neither fully accepted nor completely rejected me. Only after I handed him a lucrative $30 million project that secured his position in the city did he finally acknowledge me as his girlfriend. His gaze swept the room, scanning left and right as if searching for something or someone. With an almost indifferent tone, he responded, "What do you think?" I understood immediately. Someone in this room cared more about his answer than I did. Was it Sarah? Though invisible, I could almost feel her presence hiding in some unseen corner. "So is it a yes or no?" I pressed, my voice sharp and demanding. "Be straightforward." Joanna rushed over, her laugh artificially awkward, attempting to diffuse the mounting tension. "Oh, Andrew, don't be so shy. Emily wants to hear you say it loud and clear. Come on, don't be like a block of wood." Mrs. Carter joined in, encouraging Andrew with an apparently supportive smile. After what felt like an eternity of silence, Andrew finally spoke. His eyes met mine, a flicker of resentment dancing within their depths. "Yes, you're my girlfriend," he declared. I clapped my hands together in exaggerated mock surprise. "Oh my, I knew there was a misunderstanding. I don't like you and never wanted to be your girlfriend." The entire Carter family turned, their expressions synchronized in confusion, before switching back to Andrew with identical looks of disbelief. "You're all crooked from the top down," I proclaimed, shaking my head. "Don't mention my name again. It's filthy." Walking over to Mrs. Carter, I offered a seemingly sympathetic pat on her shoulder. "Your husband's illegitimate son is older than your daughter. That must sting. Be careful. One day the father and son might join forces to set you up." With that, I departed the room, my bodyguards flanking me. I walked out of the hall with my head held high, radiating confidence and defiance. Just as I was about to leave the estate completely, a girl dressed inappropriately for the occasion came running after me. She spread her thin arms, blocking my path, trembling from head to toe, clearly terrified. A trembling girl blocked my path, her voice stammering, "I want you to apologize to Andrew." It was Sarah. I studied her for a moment, testing her resolve. "Do you think this is touching?" She lifted her chin defiantly, tears welling in her eyes, staring at me without a word. Exasperated, I challenged her. "Why should I apologize? Give me a reason." "No one can choose their origins," she replied, her voice quivering but resolute. "You insulted him because of his background. That's your fault. You owe him an apology." I scanned the gathering crowd behind me, then fixed Sarah with a glacial stare. He couldn't choose his origins, sure, but does that mean he can't die? The atmosphere instantly transformed. Only Mrs. Carter and her daughter betrayed a hint of satisfaction in their eyes. "How can you be so cruel?" Sarah sobbed, her emotions overwhelming her. Andrew rushed to her side, his eyes filled with a calculated display of pity. "Sarah, stop it. Someone like her could never have empathy." I laughed coldly. "Andrew, your very existence is an insult to the rightful wife. If you truly had any empathy, you wouldn't have gone through with this family reunion charade. Remember this, every time I see you, I'll make sure to humiliate you with a wave of my hand." Signaling my bodyguards, I pushed past Sarah and Andrew. Just before leaving, I turned back to Joanna with a mocking smile. "Don't worry, you're the legitimate daughter. If you ever run into trouble, you can always come to me for help." Joanna froze, instinctively glancing at her father before lowering her head. Her mother intervened. "Emily, I know Andrew must have upset you. I'll scold him later. Please don't be angry anymore." Sarah, worried, glanced at Andrew, her shoulders trembling. Taking her cue, Andrew approached me, lowering his gaze. "So I didn't respond to your messages for 2 days. Fine. I'm sorry. Can you stop making a scene?" In my previous life, his delayed responses had become so routine that I'd grown numb to them. I had rationalized his behavior, believing his difficult life and introverted personality justified his coldness. I thought that by giving more, by sacrificing more, I could eventually soften his sharp edges. Instead, I had only trapped myself in a toxic cycle, becoming obsessed with fixing someone who didn't want to be fixed. "If you're truly sorry," I said calmly, "then kneel and say it." Andrew's laugh was bitter and low. "I knew you've always looked down on me. Are you done playing games? So get lost. Get out of here. Is that your limit? What if I called you a little bastard?" The words dripped with calculated contempt. Andrew lunged at me, his face distorted by rage, but my bodyguard intercepted him effortlessly, restraining him without breaking a sweat. I adjusted my coat and strolled away, every movement deliberate. The Lin family, a prestigious lineage with a 100-year legacy, had crumbled from internal decay, like a magnificent structure eaten away by hidden parasites. In contrast, the Carter family was nothing more than a nouveau riche clan, opportunists who had simply ridden the wave of a favorable economic era. In my previous life, I had been blinded by foolish sentiment, generously providing them opportunities to leech off my family's hard-earned resources. Now, with my rebirth, everything would start anew. My priority was crystal clear: prevent the Lin family's decline and exact precise revenge against Andrew. Settling into my car, I began reviewing video recordings captured by my bodyguards. "Miss Lin, they've arrived," my guard in the passenger seat announced. Through the window, I observed 2 full buses disgorging a crowd of Andrew's maternal relatives. They approached the Carter family's gated community, their bright smiles a stark contrast to the nervous security guards spinning in confused circles, before remembering to call for backup. It's a pity Andrew's mother isn't here, I mused. Otherwise, this would have been even more entertaining. Reporters in parked cars couldn't resist the unfolding spectacle. Camera lenses emerged from windows, capturing the perfectly sunny day, ideal for photographic documentation. I would ensure this material spread extensively, both online and offline. Andrew's extended family, old neighbors, and acquaintances would soon witness this dramatic scene. The rightful wife's relatives, including those neighborhood square dancers who thrived on community drama, would be thoroughly informed. Sarah's backstory played through my mind. Andrew's childhood neighbor and classmate, she came from a financially struggling family, nearly abandoning her education. Andrew's father had sponsored her studies, a seemingly generous act that masked deeper complexities. During college, Sarah attended a university in the same city as Andrew. Their schools were separated by an hour-and-a-half bus ride. Curiously, despite her family's financial constraints, she managed to rent an off-campus apartment, conveniently positioned for Andrew's visits. Online photographs documented their relationship's evolution, from innocent youth to a more polished, mature portrayal. As I delved deeper into the evidence, a pattern emerged. Sarah and Andrew's relationship revealed itself through subtle details, most notably, their progressively more expensive wardrobes. After graduation, Sarah joined the Carter family company under the guise of repaying her benefactor's kindness. She started as an administrative assistant, gradually becoming a long-term employee. Intriguingly, her base salary was supplemented by mysterious monthly deposits into a separate account, a financial arrangement that spoke volumes about her true relationship with the family. Reviewing the compiled information on my phone, memories of our college years flooded back. We were in the same department, and during the second semester of our sophomore year, I fell for Andrew during a debate competition. Before confessing my feelings, I carefully investigated his relationship status. Everyone, without exception, claimed he had no girlfriend. Now, I understood the elaborate charade. I had been manipulated from the very beginning, a pawn in their carefully constructed game. The most ironic part? Joanna had been complicit, helping to cover their tracks the entire time. In my previous life, I had viewed Andrew as a pitiful child, constrained by his parents' limitations. I never uncovered the truth, not even until my dying breath. But now, armed with knowledge, I had powerful ammunition. A meticulously timed wave of well-edited leaks began. Within days, Andrew's carefully cultivated reputation crumbled. His clean-cut image dissolved as online comments mockingly dubbed him Little White-Eyed Wolf. Fabricated stories about his past began circulating, further destroying his social standing. Leaked records revealed Andrew's father had been secretly sending him money over the years, a revelation clearly orchestrated by Mrs. Carter herself. She had been following my lead, even amplifying my efforts. When I strategically tipped her off about a mole Andrew had planted in the company, her attacks became ruthlessly precise. Mrs. Carter's message was clear. She could tolerate marital indiscretions, but she would never forgive someone threatening her children's interests. By Friday, the fallout was complete. Andrew moved out of the Carter estate, publicly renouncing any financial connection to the family. In front of Mrs. Carter's friends and family, he swore never to use another cent of their money, even relinquishing ownership of properties under his name. Sarah was fired from the company and personally escorted back to her hometown by Andrew, a final, humiliating act of apparent closure. I was in a fantastic mood. The temptation to invite Joanna out and extract more details was strong, but I restrained myself. Surprisingly, it was Andrew who couldn't contain himself and came to my house instead. Rain pelted down mercilessly as Andrew stood outside my villa's iron gates. His face was a canvas of raw scratches and bruises, his appearance disheveled and desperate. He shouted my name repeatedly, sounding like a starving stray dog begging for mercy. From the second-floor window, I watched him holding a steaming cup of coffee. His pathetic display was almost theatrical. Only when he finally noticed me standing there did I signal for someone to let him in. When we met face to face, Andrew sneezed loudly, completely drenched from head to toe. His red eyes and runny nose made him look pitifully vulnerable. I waited for him to speak, but he simply stared, as if deliberately attempting to evoke my sympathy. Losing patience, I sighed heavily. This carpet is quite expensive. If it gets wet, it'll be ruined. Are you going to pay for it? Andrew's Adam's apple bobbed as he struggled to find words. Can you tell me why? He finally asked. What exactly happened? I don't want things to end so inexplicably. The irony wasn't lost on me. In my previous life, I had gone out of my way to treat him well, only to receive curt, stingy responses. Now that I wanted to be rid of him, suddenly he was full of words. Intrigued, I propped my chin on my hand, watching him with amusement. How did you convince Sarah to play along? I pressed. She's been your official girlfriend for years. Even when she saw us getting close, she never seemed to mind. Did you promise her she'd be your mistress? Or maybe your side chick? For years, I had openly pursued Andrew. My intentions were never a secret. Even street dogs must have known. Yet Sarah had never once challenged our relationship. Was Andrew some kind of promising investment worth her total sacrifice? At Sarah's mention, Andrew immediately lowered his head, avoiding my gaze. His hands clenched into tight fists, revealing his inner turmoil. After a long, tense silence, he offered a weak explanation. It's not what you think. I've only ever seen Sarah as a sister. You know I've never had much family. He took 2 steps closer, his gaze suddenly firm and intense. No one's ever respected me. It wasn't until I met you that I found a bit of confidence. Emily, I've realized these past few days that you're all I truly have. Sarah is just my sister. I stared at him coldly. Sister? I responded with a sardonic laugh. She must think purple is a very sophisticated color. My expression darkened, and I clenched my own fists, matching his intensity. Monroe, there's something filthy here. Help me get rid of it. The moment I spoke, the butler and 6 bodyguards materialized, a security protocol that had become routine since Andrew began his harassment. I rarely ventured anywhere without this protective entourage. My recent actions against Andrew were calculated beyond mere revenge. I aimed to ignite internal conflict within the Carter family and create an opportunity for their competitors to exploit the chaos. The strategy worked perfectly. Rumors and scandals engulfed Andrew, creating a perfect storm of destruction. Mr. Carter found himself overwhelmed, his wife more focused on power struggles and asset protection than damage control. The company's leadership crumbled under mounting pressure, ultimately leading to Mr. Carter's hospitalization after suffering a heart attack. His wife didn't even visit him, instead seizing the leadership vacuum to promote her relatives to key positions. I had been meticulously monitoring their company, and I struck with precision. Teaming up with strategic outsiders, I systematically dismantled their infrastructure, carving up projects, poaching key personnel, and cornering them from every possible angle. My moves were ruthlessly efficient, leaving my father both surprised and intrigued. "Why are you targeting the Carters so aggressively?" he asked. "Their company isn't that big." I shrugged casually. "Just a breakup. Revenge, you know." His frown deepened. "That's not right. Relationships are mutual. When it's over, it's over. You need the grace to accept consequences." My smile remained enigmatic. This was my opportunity to gain experience, to practice strategic maneuvering while their family was in turmoil. It would prepare me for managing more complex business challenges in the future. "It's just normal business behavior," I declared with an air of righteousness. "Nothing personal." My father didn't fully believe me, but he had always been dissatisfied with how I had previously prioritized Andrew over my career. Now that I was focusing on business strategy, He offered full support. "Be steady in your actions and ruthless in correcting mistakes," he advised, watching me identify and root out potential internal issues in our own company. Just as I had nearly forgotten Andrew's existence, consumed by my strategic operations, he appeared with his father at our home, requesting a direct meeting with mine. My naturally suspicious father couldn't comprehend their sudden visit. By the time I rushed home from work, the three men sat in the living room, forcing awkward, tension-filled smiles. As I sat next to my father, he leaned over and whispered, "Are you back with him?" Before I could respond, Andrew, emboldened by his father's approving nod, suddenly knelt before me on one knee, pulling a diamond ring from his suit's inner pocket. "Emily, will you marry me?" The words hung in the air like a challenge. My father's face darkened as he set down his teacup with a loud, deliberate clink. His sharp gaze darted between me and Andrew, the pressure in the room becoming suffocating. I immediately shook my head at my father, signaling my complete surprise. I hadn't the faintest idea about Andrew's dramatic proposal. My father coughed, turning to Andrew's father. Sensing the tension, Andrew's father quickly stood up, forcing an unconvincing smile. "Andrew and Emily have been in love for many years. Their feelings are deep. There were some misunderstandings before, but now Andrew is about to take over the family business. I promise Emily will never be wronged again." Andrew's gaze remained unwavering, intense. "I know you think I have ulterior motives, but I still want to try. I believe in your judgment, and I trust that you won't abandon me when I need you most. This is the best time to prove our love." His burning gaze spoke volumes. What he truly meant was crystal clear. "You want the best deal, and I'm the most suitable buyer you've found so far." "Is this about selling yourself for a good price?" I challenged. Andrew faltered, his expression strained as if bearing an enormous burden. "I understand you," he said. "You value relationships more than anything. I want to show you through this gesture that I won't let you down. From now on, we're family. I'm completely yours." My father abruptly stood up and left without a word, retreating upstairs via the elevator. Andrew's father tried awkwardly to smooth things over, his forced smile crumbling. "Uncle?" I asked softly, a faint smile playing on my lips. "Do you know about Sarah?" He hesitated. "What about her?" We both knew he was complicit, likely the one coaching Andrew in the art of maintaining multiple relationships, mimicking his own behavior of keeping one woman at home while entertaining another on the side. "Sarah is your son's true love," I said quietly, locking eyes with him. "I'm just the fool paying for everything. Don't let him keep hurting me or I'll hold a grudge." My deepening smile seemed to unnerve him. Without hesitation, he turned on Andrew and kicked him to the ground. "Did you betray Emily?" he roared. I had no intention of prolonging the drama. Rising coldly, I declared, "That's enough. Joanna and her mother have already told me everything. Stop pretending." The room fell into an awkward silence as I walked away, my words carefully crafted after skillfully extracting information from Joanna and her mother. I took the elevator to the second-floor study, finding my heartbroken father. "I know you care about that boy," he began, his expression stern, his gaze sharp. "But don't blame me for being ruthless. I won't allow the two of you to be together. Shameless people will stop at nothing. Stay away from him, or you'll face nothing but ruin." In the study, my father's grave expression highlighted the white hairs at his temples. Emotions began to spiral as I recognized these exact words from my previous life, words I had once foolishly dismissed. Back then, blinded by infatuation, I had lashed out at him. I had accused him of being a snob, looking down on the humble Carter family. I even believed Andrew's family treated me better than my own parents. Now, I understood the painful truth. I had been sheltered, naive, unable to recognize the malice hidden beneath human kindness or distinguish genuine affection from calculated manipulation. This time, I approached differently. Kneeling beside my father, I leaned my head against his leg. "Dad, you're right. I've learned my lesson. I won't give him another chance. He'll never rise again." Before he could respond, I quickly shifted the conversation, forcing a cheerful tone to dispel the heavy atmosphere. The greatest threat to any business is internal corruption. Regular self-audits are essential to prevent long-term damage. The Carter family is a perfect example of what happens when you don't. Look at the mess they're in now. We need to take their downfall as a lesson. We can't end up like them. Imagine us going to someone's house to propose and being thrown out. I hadn't blocked Andrew's contact information. He continued sending ridiculous messages, as if possessed by a tragic romantic hero. I found them amusing, using them as motivation to never forget the humiliation of my past life. Recently, he had gone suspiciously quiet. Discreetly, I had someone investigate his whereabouts. Days later, I learned he was attending an investment promotion event. Something felt off. With his current standing, he shouldn't have been invited. I cleared my schedule to attend. She and Ning Investment was a major industry player. Something was definitely suspicious. When we crossed paths at the venue, I greeted Andrew and those around him with my signature polite smile. "Hello, I'm Emily Lin from Shanghong Group. May I introduce myself?" A man beside Andrew extended his hand for a brief handshake, pulling out a business card. "Hello, I'm Matt Fu," he said. The embossed card identified him as the president of Shi and Ning Investment. I studied him carefully. His features were striking, bold and intense, with deep-set eyes that exuded a predatory charm. A relaxed, laid-back demeanor gave him an air of effortless authority. Matt Fu carried himself as if every room instantly became his personal living space. "It's an honor to meet you, Mr. Fu," I said smoothly. "Now I understand why my father always speaks so highly of you. You're truly a role model for our generation." He laughed heartily, making no attempt to feign humility. "Your father's insight is something we younger folks should aspire to." His nonchalant confidence was both intriguing and unsettling. I maintained a composed expression, carefully hiding the flicker of curiosity stirring within me. Ultimately, his words seemed more like self-praise than genuine modesty. "Mr. Fu, let's head to the office and continue our discussion," someone suggested. Perhaps it was my imagination, but a flicker of irritation crossed Andrew's eyes when he saw me chatting with Matt. His tone carried a hint of anger as he interrupted. "We'll meet again later, Ms. Lin." Matt offered an apologetic smile before leaving with Andrew. The two men, tall, imposing, exuding confidence, walked away with surprisingly complementary profiles. Based on my investigations and knowledge from my previous life, I could already anticipate Andrew's plan. Playing the hero wasn't as straightforward as he might believe. Later, Joanna fumed at a cafe. "Who does Andrew think he is to make such a reckless decision? He's barely taken over the company." "It's far too risky," I agreed. "A deal like this is courting disaster. An illegitimate son running the company? Who knows if he's secretly funneling assets elsewhere?" Joanna gripped her phone, her fingertips turning white. After a long pause, she looked at me suspiciously. "Emily, where did you hear this?" I smiled softly. "The investor he's negotiating with happens to be my type. I might pursue him." With those carefully chosen words, the rumors I wanted to spread began their silent march. That evening, I invited Matt to dinner. He lounged in his chair with casual elegance, gently swirling a glass of red wine. Long fingers tapped idly on the glass rim, his tailored black shirt accentuating broad shoulders and a smooth physique. "You invited me to dinner, yet all you talk about is Andrew," he said, his deep voice tinged with amusement. "Why not invite him directly? Do I look that free to you?" I forced a polite laugh. Extracting information was an art, especially challenging with a seasoned operator like Matt. "Fine," I thought. "Honesty it is." I retrieved a proposal from my bag and handed it to him. As he opened it and read the title, his eyebrow arched slightly. Matt straightened in his seat, reading further. "Shared economy," he remarked, his voice laced with intrigue. "Miss Lynn, this concept is quite unique, very forward-thinking. The advantage of being reborn, indeed." "Mr. Fu, I trust your judgment," I said. "Are you interested in partnering?" He challenged me. "Miss Lynn, if you're starting a business, you likely have no shortage of potential partners. Why choose me?" I met his gaze, raising my glass. "It's not about me choosing you. It's about whether you'll choose between Andrew and me. Pick one." My words were deliberate and measured. I wanted him to decide which project held greater value, which person was more worth his investment. I knew he was intelligent enough to understand the underlying strategy. When we parted, light rain fell outside. Matt held an umbrella, walking me to my car. Our bodies nearly touched. As I opened the car door, he spoke in a low, unexpectedly seductive tone. "He's not worthy of you." I paused briefly, smiled faintly, and said goodbye. The Carter Corporation's internal strife was severe, teetering on collapse, a topic of industry-wide gossip. While I took advantage of their family's turmoil to clean up my own household, my actions appeared entirely justifiable. After uncovering more internal issues, my father forcibly dragged me abroad to attend meetings. On Saturday, a foreign partner hosted a ball at their estate. With my father dealing with a headache, he asked me to accompany senior executives in his place. I hadn't expected to see Matt Fu in the grand hall. Dressed in a tailored suit, his tall frame and confident posture distinguished him among the socialites. He moved through the bustling scene with grace, exuding effortless charm. The classical music seemed to exist solely for him. I set down my wine glass and approached him. With a slight bow, I extended my hand. "Mr. Fu, may I have this dance?" His eyes lit up. "It would be an honor." I placed my hand on his shoulder while his arm encircled my waist. Our hands clasped, and we moved in perfect synchronization. The harmony between us was unexpectedly seamless. As the dance neared its end, a woman closest to me suddenly twisted her ankle, screaming as she fell toward us. Matt reacted swiftly, pulling me into his arms and out of harm's way. She collapsed embarrassingly at our feet. I moved to help her up, but she seemed unbothered. Addressing Matt in fluent French, she teased, "Such a perfect opportunity for a hero to save a damsel in distress. How could you let it slip away?" The moment hung suspended between us, charged with unspoken tension. Matt stood behind me, his hands clasped casually behind his back, responding in a smooth French that rolled like velvet. I didn't let it slip away. "Thank you for the opportunity." The woman raised an eyebrow, her disappointment artfully performed. Turning to me, she spoke in hesitant Chinese. "Hello, beautiful," a phrase that seemed both playful and mysterious. This unexpected interaction unexpectedly lifted my spirits. It was a reminder that life could still surprise me, could still hold moments of unexpected lightness and joy. Despite the heavy weight of my father's health pressing on my mind, I didn't linger at the estate. I left early, guiding my car down the winding mountain road. Suddenly another vehicle appeared behind me, aggressive, menacing. It rode dangerously close, its intention clear, to force me off the road. In that instant, I understood. This was revenge. Recently, I had cleaned house in the company, removing freeloading relatives and long-serving staff who contributed nothing. I'd compensated them fairly, but some remained bitter. A flash of memory struck me. My previous death, violent and sudden, crushed, contorted, obliterated in an explosion. My heart raced, but I gripped the steering wheel with determination. I would not be a victim again. Adrenaline surged as I accelerated, navigating hairpin turns with precision. Just as I reached for my phone to call for help, a blinding white light erupted before me. Visibility vanished. Panic seized me. I wrenched the steering wheel hard. A thunderous crash. The car shuddered violently. The airbag exploded against me. A sudden, brutal punch. Disoriented but driven by survival instinct, I unbuckled my seatbelt, snatched my phone, and stumbled out. I staggered toward the woods, pure survival propelling me forward. Footsteps crashed behind me, at least 2 pursuers. I plunged downhill, ducking branches, leaping over stones, until a familiar figure materialized. Matt. He had noticed something amiss at the crash site and raced to the next curve, climbing up to find me. Soon, we reached the main road. I collapsed into his car, and we sped away. Death's fingers barely uncurled from my throat. Wiping blood from my face, I began laughing, a sound bordering on hysteria and triumph. "Are you okay?" Matt asked, clearly startled. "Surviving a disaster means future blessings," I said, my laughter a defiant melody. "Do you believe that, Matt?" He glanced at me, a mix of concern and amusement dancing in his eyes. "Believe? Sure. I'll believe anything you say. You could tell me the sun's in the sky right now, and I'd believe you." I looked ahead, catching the moon's silvery glow, a silent witness to our narrow escape. A faint, almost delirious laugh escaped my lips. The car had raced through the night, its journey anything but smooth. Consciousness slipped away, and when I finally awakened, I found myself surrounded by a constellation of concerned faces: police officers, Matt, my father, and various hospital staff. Word was that Andrew was mid-flight, rushing to reach me. After providing my statement to the authorities, I reached for my phone. Matt's voice cut through the silence, freezing me mid-motion. "What's he coming for?" I asked, my tone sharp with suspicion. "Who knows?" Matt responded, his response carefully measured. My father's sarcasm emerged like a well-honed blade. "It's not like he knows how to treat patients or solve crimes, does he?" Yet when he turned to Matt, his demeanor transformed. Warmth replaced criticism. "Thanks to you," he said, smiling genuinely. "Matt, when you're back home, come to our house for dinner. Your aunt would love to cook for you." Matt accepted graciously. "Of course. I'd be happy to visit." Curiosity gnawed at me. How did Andrew even find out about my accident? I turned to Matt, seeking answers. He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "On the way to the hospital, you kept calling out Andrew's name. He was calling your phone simultaneously, so I picked up. As soon as he heard about the accident, he insisted on coming. It's obvious he cares about you," Matt added, his tone neutral, yet weighted with unspoken meaning. Fragmented memories flickered through my mind like a damaged film reel. Painful scenes surfaced. Andrew forcing me to kneel before Sarah. Him locking me out on a freezing winter morning. His father's inappropriate comments while Andrew remained silent. Then, a contrasting memory. A breathtaking autumn sunset on our wedding anniversary. The moment just before he abandoned me in our crashed car. "Be a good person in your next life," his voice echoed, a haunting refrain that repeated until the car's final explosive moment of liberation. When Andrew arrived, hurried, disheveled, visibly anxious, my father didn't even acknowledge his presence. He assigned bodyguards to watch over me and departed without a word. An uncomfortable silence descended. The doctor stood nearby, reluctant to interrupt. Andrew fidgeted, searching for words, unable to bridge the emotional chasm between us. I offered no assistance, watching him with a coldness that could freeze flames. After what seemed an eternity, he forced an unnatural smile. "Are you okay?" I shook my head slightly, my response distant and polite. "Thank you for coming to see me. I'm fine now. You should go back." A hint of kindness, sharp as a blade, followed. "If you're leaving, I can reimburse your round-trip ticket." For a moment, anger blazed in Andrew's eyes. a wild, desperate emotion he struggled to contain. But he held back, turning away. Silence enveloped him, heavy with unspoken words. "Emily, don't forget," Andrew's voice trembled. "You were the one who came after me first." I sighed. My response weighted with weariness. "Don't bring up the past." My words struck him like a physical blow. The pain visible in his eyes was palpable. "I find it humiliating too," I continued, my tone almost clinical. "In life or death situations, it's easy for a girl to mistake gratitude for affection toward her savior." The knife twisted deeper. "I already like someone else. From now on, please keep your distance. I don't want my reputation to suffer because of you." Andrew whirled around, a vein pulsing at his temple, a testament to his barely contained emotions. "Emily, are you playing me? If that's what you want to think, I can't stop you," I replied, my sincerity genuine yet cutting. Seeing his trembling frame, I softened my approach slightly. "Isn't Sarah the one you love? Don't worry, I won't bother you anymore. Take this chance to treasure her properly." His eyes swirled with a storm of emotions, desperation, anger, and something deeper. "Emily, please," he begged, "help me out this one time. I don't want to lose." Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Suddenly, something inside him snapped. He lunged toward me, face contorted with raw, uncontrolled rage. Before he could reach me, bodyguards intercepted, grabbing his arms and dragging him back. "You expletive!" he screamed, his red-rimmed eyes blazing with fury. "You turn your back on me just like that? What did I ever do to you?" I remained unmoved, a faint smile playing on my lips as I watched him being restrained. Internally, I understood the deeper dynamics at play. The Carter family was unraveling, and Andrew knew it. He had flown all this way because he recognized staying was futile. I was his last hope. The Lynn family, his only potential escape route. My suspicions crystallized when I learned the Carter family's finances were on the brink of collapse, with regulatory authorities circling like vultures. An audit could strike at any moment. In my previous life, the Lynn family had faced similar circumstances, which explained my urgent actions this time, despite potential consequences. A week later, I was discharged from the hospital and returned home. My father immediately called Matt, inviting him for dinner. By the time I arrived home, Matt was already comfortably seated in our living room, chatting and laughing with my mother. Their rapport was so natural that I felt a twinge of jealousy. I rushed over, clinging to my mother's arm like a child seeking comfort. "Mom, I almost couldn't see you again." Her eyes welled up with tears, and she pulled me into a tight embrace. "You nearly scared me to death. You should thank Matt properly. If it weren't for him, how could I go on?" Her words triggered a memory from my past life. How, after marrying Andrew, she had grown to despise him so much that she chose to live alone. A thought lingered in my mind. When Andrew heard about my accident, was he alone? Completely shattered? His heart fractured into countless pieces? During dinner, my parents' warmth toward Matt bordered on excessive. Beneath the table, I discreetly nudged Matt's foot. "Notice anything unusual?" I whispered. Matt's eyes sparkled with amusement. "What?" I raised an eyebrow. "In situations like this, all you need to do is casually mention you have a girlfriend, and you'll be off the hook." He playfully ran his fingers through his hair, feigning innocence. "Why would I want to escape? Your parents keep praising me. It's quite flattering. Don't you feel the same?" After dinner, I walked Matt out. Suddenly, we spotted Andrew pacing beneath a street lamp. Exhaustion etched his face, deep bags under his eyes contrasting with his freshly shaven beard and meticulously neat clothes. He had clearly made an effort to appear presentable before seeking me out. Andrew's gaze darkened upon seeing Matt. Matt shot me a complicated look. I responded with a faint smile. "Matt, lend me your arm for a moment," I said casually. Matt, ever perceptive, anticipated my intention. Before I could fully speak, he moved toward Andrew and with surprising tenderness, brushed stray hair from my forehead. Then he turned to Andrew as if nothing had happened. "What brings you here, Mr. Carter?" Matt asked smoothly. Andrew's eyes darted between Matt and me. Something seemed to click in his mind. A bitter laugh escaped him. "So, Mr. Few canceled the deal to please his lover. You two have been in cahoots from the start, haven't you?" "No, that's not true," I said quickly, meeting Andrew's gaze. For a fleeting moment, hope flickered in his eyes. "It's not a lover," I drawled, a mix of pride and mischief in my voice. "It's the girl he likes," Matt chuckled softly, his laughter carrying an ambiguous undertone. Worried he might undermine me, I clung tighter to his arm. "Though your accusations are off the mark, I don't mind how they sound," Matt continued. "After all, business isn't personal. Don't lose hope, Mr. Carter. Perhaps there will be opportunities to collaborate in the future." Andrew's face twitched. Realizing how poorly he measured up to Matt, he began to leave after a moment of silence. "Andrew," I called after him, "are you in trouble? Do you need my help?" He froze mid-step, standing motionless for what felt like an eternity before finally turning around. His pride had been thoroughly crushed. "I just want to know," Andrew said, his voice cracking with raw emotion. "Did you ever truly love me?" I sighed, a hint of wistfulness in my gesture. "I don't think I ever did." The truth hit him like a physical blow. His pupils dilated, absorbing the brutal honesty. "Your timing is unfortunate," I added, casting a meaningful glance at Matt. "My boyfriend is right here. Do you want to start an argument between us?" Matt intervened smoothly, his voice soft yet laden with emotion. "Oh, we won't argue. But I do feel sorry for you, Miss Lynn, having had to deal with someone like him." His eyes shimmered with warmth as he looked at me. Andrew's shoulders collapsed. Defeated, he turned and disappeared into the shadows. The aftermath was swift and merciless. The Carter family declared bankruptcy. Andrew's father found himself behind prison walls. Joanna and her mother, sensing the impending disaster, strategically filed for divorce. They escaped abroad with their wealth, leaving Andrew, the illegitimate son, drowning in a sea of debt. Weeks later, Matt posed a seemingly casual question after a business meeting. "Do you hate Andrew because of love turned to resentment?" I paused, then laughed, and slumped onto the couch. "That's a bit dramatic." "I can't think of any other reason," Matt pressed. "You seem to care about him a lot. Yet all those little schemes of yours have practically driven him to ruin." His curiosity was persistent, almost uncomfortably so. "I did stir the pot a little," I admitted with a mischievous smirk. "I undermined his relationship with Joanna's mother, incited the company's higher-ups to oppose his promotion, fanned the flames of internal conflicts, and reported their fraudulent accounting practices," I added. "But none of that was because of love or hatred," I emphasized. "On the contrary, it's because he hated me for no reason. I couldn't let him rise too high or gain too much." Matt's eyebrow arched, intrigued. "If I told you that Andrew becomes dangerous when he's rich, and it's safer for society when he's broke, would you believe me?" He chuckled, amused by my seriousness. "I'm telling the truth," I insisted. The saying, "a wolf in the mountains becomes reckless when fed," fits him perfectly. My own life hadn't been a walk in the park either. Investigating and cutting ties with freeloading relatives in the company had unleashed their frustration. They responded by constantly introducing potential suitors, hoping to marry me off and sever my control over the family business. My mother, overwhelmed by hosting 3 waves of relatives daily, finally reached her breaking point. Pointing directly at Matt, she declared, "My daughter already has a boyfriend in the investment world. They'll get married soon." The news swept through the business community like a wildfire. I cautiously apologized to Matt, but to my surprise, he seemed thoroughly delighted. "If you're willing," he said with a glint in his eye, "we can go to the marriage registry any time. My treat." Terror gripped me. I shook my head vigorously. The scars from my 8-year marriage in my previous life were still raw, too deeply etched to ignore. This time, I wanted nothing more than to live freely, following the compass of my own heart. Matt leaned in close, his gaze intense. In ancient times, saving someone's life meant you owed them your own. How can you be so ungrateful? I swallowed hard, attempting to steady my voice. We're business partners. You can either focus on money or romance, but not both. He straightened up, laughing softly. "You're so smart. Why not do both?" Caught off guard, I hesitated before joining his laughter. "Maybe it's worth a shot. I'm only in my 20s. Can't let the best years of my life go to waste." The shared economy concept I introduced exploded in the market. At its peak, I strategically cashed out, exiting the stage with no regrets. From that point, I became Matt's shadow. I absorbed everything I could, gradually transforming into an independent investor. My previous life's insights became my secret weapon. I focused on identifying high-potential projects and supporting talented individuals starved of resources. Within just a few years, I carved out my own reputation. No longer hiding behind the Lin family's shield, I became my parents' safety net for the future. "Teaching a student too well might starve the teacher," Matt would dramatically complain, feeling like I was outpacing him, but I had my own way of soothing his ego. A simple kiss would silence his complaints, a method I found both effective and enjoyable. At the year's end, a business trip to a small third-tier city brought an unexpected encounter with Sarah. She was utterly transformed, expensive clothes, radiating confidence, glowing with a newfound charm. On a whim, I posed a question. "Why didn't you end up with Andrew?" In my previous life, Andrew's hatred for me had stemmed from Sarah's death. But in this timeline, she was alive and well. I was genuinely curious about the intricate web connecting them and how I had become entangled. Sarah's smile turned bitter. Back then, I relied on Andrew for everything. Emotionally and financially, I was terrified of losing him. I couldn't imagine a life without him. To me, he was everything, Sarah said, her voice carrying the weight of vulnerability from the past. Whenever I imagined losing him, it felt like my entire world would collapse. She paused, her regret evident in every word. But I could never bring myself to tell Andrew about my fears. I knew he didn't have the patience to handle my emotions. Her story unfolded gently, like an intricate yet painful tapestry. My life revolved around him, but his world was so much bigger. The only power I thought I had was my compliance. I supported him in every way, no matter what. Her voice trembled as the memories came flooding back. Even when he wanted to take advantage of you, even when he refused to give me the respect I deserved, even when he sent me back to my hometown, I stayed silent. But now there was something different in her tone, a quiet strength. When I finally left him, I realized something incredible. The world didn't crumble. My life opened up. Suddenly, I didn't have to bear so much anymore. Her voice grew reflective, almost philosophical. If I had stayed, I think my life would have only ended in two ways, either suffocating under the pressure or losing my mind from frustration. She turned to me, her expression tinged with remorse. "Emily, I'm sorry. I should have warned you back then. Maybe you wouldn't have wasted so much time and emotion on him." The truth about my past came to light, dark and twisted like an unspoken revelation. Andrew had shamelessly balanced two relationships, disregarding Sarah's feelings entirely. She had no choice but to watch from the sidelines as he flaunted the illusion of a perfect relationship with me. Sarah had endured her pain and resentment in silence until she couldn't anymore. In her desperation, she had tried to escape her torment in the worst way. Andrew, unwilling to face the truth, constructed an elaborate lie for himself. He shifted all the blame onto me, convincing himself I had tempted him into wrongdoing and that I never should have existed. He built a narrative in which he was the victim, the tragic romantic forced into his mistakes. He clung to the idea that he had truly loved Sarah, that he was a good man who would never forget her. But this time, both Sarah and I had escaped, unscathed and stronger. Andrew's life, however, spiraled into chaos. Broke, homeless, and constantly on the run, he eventually hit rock bottom. Debt collectors found him, breaking his legs and leaving him to fend for himself. In his desperation, he sought my help, staking out near my home and office, but I made sure to avoid him every time. As the distance between us grew, he lost all means to find me. Yet I could always track him, from a distance. I recently discovered that he had become a rideshare driver. Life, it seemed, had its own sense of irony. One day, a child had stuck a sticker on his car's license plate without his knowledge. When he drove off, he lost all his license points in one go. Looking up at the vast sky, I couldn't help but smile. Just a little. Those who betray genuine love, I mused, how could they expect a happy ending? On my 30th birthday, Matt proposed at a seaside hotel. Months earlier, I had already discovered the prenuptial agreement he'd carefully prepared. I knew his plan and had given it considerable thought. When the moment arrived, I summoned every ounce of my acting skills. I feigned surprise, delight, and even a touch of panic before slowly shaking my head with a hint of sadness. "You know I don't like marriage contracts," I said. "I don't like being bound by responsibilities." Matt remained on one knee, stunned. Suddenly he stood, grabbed my arms, and kissed me. The sweet scent of plum wine lingered on his lips as he murmured almost incoherently, "Then do you like me? I want a title. I need one." Leaning back, I couldn't help but laugh. "Stop acting like this. You're behaving like a child begging for candy." He released me, but a dangerous glint intensified in his amber eyes. "Fine," he said, his tone low and magnetic. "No more childish games. Let's try something more mature." His eyes smoldered with intensity as his long fingers deftly untied his tie. In one fluid motion, he wrapped it around my wrists, binding them together and raising them above my head. Leaning down, his chin resting on my hair, he radiated heat. "Emily," he whispered, his voice deep and commanding, "I'll give you love and freedom. Take it. Enjoy it." His words carried wisdom beyond their moment. Love is fleeting and unpredictable, impossible to guard against. Perhaps it's better to embrace the emotions of the moment and cherish the rare, impulsive feelings that become harder to find as we grow older. With a hoarse voice, I agreed. By late spring and May, the Lynn family hosted a grand wedding. Lavish and filled with notable guests, I walked through a path lined with blooming flowers. My flowing wedding gown's long train trailed behind me. Under the gaze of family and friends, I approached Matt. His eyes were red as he gently took my hand and kissed it, a single tear slipping from his lowered gaze. But when he straightened, his expression transformed. A dazzling smile spread across his face, bold, full of life. "I told you," he said with a teasing grin. "A life-saving favor demands a lifelong repayment. There's no escaping, my wife." As the sun sets on Emily's journey, we're left with more than just a story of revenge. We witness the transformation of a woman who refused to be defined by her past, who rewrote her own destiny with every calculated move. Matt wasn't just a lover. He was her partner, her ally in a world that had once tried to break her. Their wedding wasn't just a celebration of love, but a testament to her resilience. Those tears in his eyes, they weren't just of joy, but of pure respect for the woman who had survived and thrived. Andrew, once the architect of her destruction, now reduced to a rideshare driver, a cruel twist of fate that proved karma doesn't just bite, it devours. Sarah, freed from her own invisible chains, found her voice and her strength. The Carter family, once powerful, now nothing more than a cautionary tale. But this isn't just a story about getting even, it's about reclaiming your power, about understanding that your worth isn't determined by those who hurt you, but by how you rise after being hurt. Emily Lynn showed us that second chances aren't about forgiveness, they're about transformation, about turning pain into power, betrayal into strategy, and survival into triumph. Her journey teaches us that life's most powerful revenge isn't destruction, it's success. It's standing tall, building your own empire, and proving that the best response to those who try to break you is to become unbreakable. To every person who's ever felt trapped, manipulated, or lost, remember Emily's story. Your past doesn't define you. Your response to it does. As the credits roll, one question lingers. What would you do if you got a second chance? This is Emily Lynn's story, a story of rebirth, a story of revenge, a story of absolute power, and it's only just beginning. Fade to black.